Picture this, a god so beloved that his people called him the good god, yet he wielded a massive club that could crush armies and end lives with a single swing. This isn't a contradiction from some obscure myth you've never heard of. This is Dagda, the supreme deity of the Irish Celtic pantheon, and his story reveals one of the most fascinating paradoxes in all of mythology. How can a god be both good and a harbinger of death? What did the ancient Celts understand about morality that we've forgotten? And why did they worship a father figure who could give life with one hand and take it away with the other? Today, we're diving deep into the complex world of Celtic mythology to uncover the truth behind Dagda's dual nature. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the Celtic concept of good was far more sophisticated than our modern black and white morality, and why Dagda's story might just change how you think about power, responsibility, and what it truly means to be good. So let's journey back to ancient Ireland and meet the god who embodied both creation and destruction in equal measure. Let's start with a name that doesn't mean what you think it means. And Dagda Mór translates to the great good god. Sounds pretty straightforward, right? Well, hold on to your hats because this good god carried a club that could flatten 9 men with one swing. The ancient Celts had a completely different idea about what good meant. When they called the Dagda good, they weren't talking about moral goodness. They meant he was good at his job, incredibly effective, skilled, and powerful. Think of it like calling someone a good surgeon. You're not praising their kindness, you're praising their ability to save lives. This Celtic concept of goodness focused on competence and results. The Dagda was good because he got things done. He protected his people, provided for them, and maintained the balance of the natural world. If that meant crushing enemies with his massive club, well, that was just part of the job description. Modern audiences often struggle with this idea. We've been taught to see good and evil as moral opposites, light versus dark, virtue versus sin. But the Celts saw the world differently. They understood that nature itself could be both nurturing and destructive, often at the same time. The Dagda embodied this ancient wisdom perfectly. He was a god of abundance who could also bring death. He was a protector who might destroy you if you threatened his people. This wasn't contradiction, it was completion. He represented the full spectrum of divine power. Think about it this way. A thunderstorm brings both life-giving rain and dangerous lightning. The Celts would call that storm good because it does what storms are supposed to do. The Dagda was their divine thunderstorm, beautiful, terrible, and absolutely necessary. This understanding made the Dagda more relatable to his worshippers. He wasn't some distant, perfect deity sitting on a cloud. He was a working god who faced real challenges and made tough decisions. Sometimes those decisions looked harsh from the outside, but they served the greater good of his people. The genius of this approach was its honesty about power. The Celts recognized that true authority often requires difficult choices. A leader who can only be kind is ultimately powerless. But a leader who can be both nurturing and fierce, that's someone who can actually protect their people when it matters most. The Dagda held the ultimate dad job in Celtic mythology. He was the all-father of the Tuatha Dé Danann. But unlike some divine fathers who ruled through fear, the Dagda led through a combination of wisdom, strength, and surprisingly good parenting skills. Well, mostly good anyway. The Tuatha Dé Danann, or people of the goddess Danu, were the divine tribe that ruled Ireland before humans arrived. Picture the ultimate supernatural family reunion, and you'll get the idea. The Dagda stood at the head of this divine household, managing personalities as diverse as his war-loving son Ungus and his daughter Brigid, the goddess of poetry and crafts. His role wasn't just ceremonial either. The Dagda actively shaped the abilities and destinies of his divine children. He gifted magical items, shared wisdom, and when necessary, laid down the law. Take his relationship with the Morrigan, the goddess of war and fate. Their alliance was both political and personal, binding the forces of leadership and conflict together. The Dagda's connection to the land of Ireland ran deeper than mere rulership. He was literally wed to the sovereignty of the island. This wasn't just symbolic. Celtic kings performed actual marriage ceremonies with goddesses representing their territories. The Dagda's union with various land goddesses made him the ultimate father figure for all of Ireland. This paternal role extended to his people's daily lives. The Dagda's magical cauldron fed entire armies, ensuring no one under his protection went hungry. His decisions about war and peace affected every soul in the divine realm. Talk about family responsibility on a cosmic scale. But here's where things get interesting. The Dagda wasn't an authoritarian ruler. Celtic society valued counsel and collaboration, even among the gods. The Dagda listened to his divine family's input before making major decisions. He was more like a clan chief than a dictator, leading through earned respect rather than divine mandate. His parenting style produced some remarkable results. His children became major deities in their own right. Bridget influenced poetry, smithcraft, and healing throughout Celtic culture. Oengus became the beloved god of love and youth. The Dagda's guidance helped each child find their unique divine purpose. The Dagda also served as mediator in divine disputes. When tensions arose between different factions of the Tuatha Dé Danann, he stepped in to restore harmony. His ability to see multiple perspectives and find balanced solutions made him invaluable as a leader. Plus, that massive club certainly helped end arguments quickly when diplomacy failed. This combination of nurturing father and firm leader made the Dagda uniquely effective. He understood that true strength comes from building others up, not tearing them down. His divine family remained united and powerful because he invested in their individual growth while maintaining overall stability. Now let's talk about the ultimate kitchen appliance, the Dagda's magical cauldron. This wasn't your grandmother's soup pot. This bronze beauty could feed an entire army without ever running empty. Imagine never having to worry about grocery shopping again, though the hidden costs might make you think twice. The cauldron measured several feet across and was decorated with intricate Celtic knotwork. Ancient sources describe it as being made from bronze mixed with magical metals from the other world. When activated, it would bubble and steam, producing whatever food its users desired. Roasted meat, fresh bread, honey mead, all appeared at the Dagda's command. But here's the fascinating part. The cauldron responded to the worthiness of those it fed. Cowards and oath breakers would find their portions smaller or less satisfying. Brave warriors and honest folk received generous helpings of the finest food imaginable. The cauldron didn't just provide sustenance, it provided justice through cuisine. The Dagda used this power strategically during conflicts. Before the famous Battle of Mag Tuired, he fed his entire army from the cauldron. Every warrior went into battle well-nourished and confident in their leader's ability to provide. That's some serious psychological warfare. Your enemies are hungry while your troops are feasting. The cauldron's magic came with responsibilities, though. The Dagda couldn't just use it selfishly or frivolously. Celtic mythology emphasized reciprocity. Magical gifts demanded wisdom and restraint from their users. The cauldron would only work for someone who truly understood the burden of leadership and the cost of power. Stories tell of times when the cauldron tested the Dagda himself. During one particularly harsh winter, it refused to produce food until he had shared his own personal stores with starving mortals. The cauldron was teaching him that true leadership means sacrificing for others, not just having power over them. The abundance wasn't unlimited either. The cauldron required periodic rest and renewal. The Dagda had to perform specific rituals and make offerings to keep it functioning. He also needed to ensure it wasn't overused. Even magical abundance has limits. This taught important lessons about sustainability and respect for natural cycles. The cauldron's deeper symbolism connected to the Celtic understanding of hospitality. In Celtic culture, sharing food was sacred. A good host never let guests leave hungry. The Dagda's cauldron represented this value elevated to divine levels. He was the ultimate host, capable of feeding anyone who came to him with genuine need. However, the cauldron's power came with a dark side. Those who tried to steal it or use it unworthily faced terrible consequences. The cauldron would turn their food to ash or worse. One myth tells of a greedy king who tried to claim it. He ended up cursed to feel eternal hunger no matter how much he ate. This magical vessel also served as a symbol of the Dagda's connection to the earth's fertility. The cauldron's endless bounty reflected the land's potential for abundance when properly tended. It reminded people that prosperity comes from wise stewardship, not just taking whatever you want from nature. Meet the most paradoxical weapon in mythology, the Dagda's club. This wasn't just any old bludgeon. One end could kill 9 men with a single blow, while the other end could bring the dead back to life. Talk about the ultimate multi-tool, though you definitely want to check which end you were grabbing before using it. The club was massive, so heavy that the Dagda had to drag it behind him, leaving deep furrows in the earth. Ancient texts describe it as being made from oak heartwood, reinforced with bronze, and blessed with otherworldly magic. The weapon stood taller than most men and required the Dagda's divine strength to wield effectively. The death-dealing end was carved with intricate spirals and knots that seemed to move in the light. When the Dagda swung this end in battle, it didn't just kill enemies, it obliterated them so completely that their souls couldn't find their way to the afterlife. This was the ultimate punishment for those who threatened his people or violated sacred laws. But here's where the Dagda's wisdom really shone. He rarely used the lethal end unless absolutely necessary. Celtic culture valued honor and proportional response. The Dagda understood that permanent destruction should be reserved for the most serious threats. Most of the time, he preferred to incapacitate enemies and give them a chance to reconsider their choices. The life-giving end was carved with symbols of growth and renewal, spiraling vines, budding flowers, and protective runes. When the Dagda touched fallen warriors with this end, their wounds healed instantly. Death was reversed, breath returned to still lungs, and hearts began beating again. It was resurrection on demand. This dual nature reflected the Dagda's role as a god of both war and peace. He could end conflicts through overwhelming force, but he could also heal the wounds that conflict created. The club represented his ability to bring both justice and mercy to any situation. Pretty handy when you're trying to maintain cosmic balance. The club's powers weren't automatic, though. The Dagda had to choose consciously which end to use. This choice carried enormous weight. Deciding who lived and who died permanently shaped the fate of entire kingdoms. Celtic mythology emphasized that such power required perfect wisdom and absolute commitment to justice. One famous story tells of a battle where the Dagda's enemies begged for mercy after seeing his club in action. Instead of finishing them with the death end, he used the life end to heal their wounded and sent them home with a warning. His mercy was so unexpected that these former enemies became his most loyal allies. The club also served as a tool of divine judgment. The Dagda could use it to test the character of mortals and gods alike. Those who faced the club with courage and honor might find themselves healed and blessed. Those who showed cowardice or cruelty faced the consequences of their choices in the most final way possible. But the club's greatest power might have been symbolic. It reminded everyone that life and death were part of the same cycle. The Dagda wielded both aspects not as separate forces, but as connected parts of natural law. He understood that sometimes death was necessary for new life to flourish. The responsibility of carrying such a weapon changed the Dagda himself. He became more thoughtful, more careful with his words and actions. When you can permanently end someone's existence or grant them eternal life, every decision becomes monumentally important. The club made him not just powerful, but wise. Here's where things get philosophically wild. The Dagda wasn't just a god with mood swings. He embodied the fundamental Celtic understanding of reality itself. The ancient Celts saw duality everywhere, light and dark, life and death, creation and destruction. They didn't view these as opposites fighting each other. Instead, they were two sides of the same cosmic coin. Think about nature for a moment. Spring brings beautiful flowers, but it also kills off winter's landscape. Summer provides warmth and growth, but it can also bring drought and wildfires. The Dagda represented this exact principle. He was the god of abundance who could also bring famine, the protector who might destroy you for the greater good. This concept was revolutionary compared to other mythologies. Greek gods were often petty and vindictive. Looking at you, Hera. Norse gods were warriors preparing for inevitable doom. But Celtic deities like the Dagda were different. They were forces of nature that simply were. No moral judgment, no good versus evil drama. The Dagda's duality showed up in everything he touched. His cauldron fed armies, but it also reminded people that resources weren't infinite. His club could heal, but healing sometimes required destroying what was diseased first. Even his role as a father figure had this double edge. He loved his children, but he'd sacrifice them if the land demanded it. What's fascinating is how this reflected Celtic society itself. They understood that a king might need to make brutal decisions to protect his people. A harvest celebration also honored the death of the grain. Life and death weren't enemies. They were dance partners in an eternal waltz. The Dagda embodied the seasonal cycle that ruled Celtic life. In spring, he was the generous father providing for his people. Summer brought his protective warrior aspect. Autumn showed his role as the wise judge deciding who lived and who died. Winter revealed his connection to the underworld and renewal through death. This made him incredibly relatable to ancient peoples. Unlike distant perfect gods, the Dagda felt real. He struggled with the same impossible choices that plagued human leaders. Should you save one village or five? Feed your family or your neighbors? The Dagda faced these dilemmas on a cosmic scale. Other mythologies tried to separate good and evil into different characters. The Celts were smarter than that. They recognized that the same force that brings life also brings death. The same rain that feeds crops can also flood them. The Dagda was their way of saying, life is complicated and so are the gods. But wait until you hear about the price this divine complexity demanded. The Dagda's dual nature wasn't a gift. It was a burden that would shape every decision he ever made. Keep watching to discover what it truly cost to be the good god. Being the good god came with a price tag that would make even modern politicians think twice. The Dagda didn't just have power, he had responsibility for the entire cosmic balance. Imagine being the person who decides whether it rains or shines, and knowing that either choice will make someone suffer. Every decision the Dagda made rippled through the fabric of reality itself. When he chose to fill his cauldron to feed one tribe, another tribe somewhere else faced scarcity. When he used his club to heal a wounded warrior, the natural order demanded that death claim someone else. This wasn't cruelty, it was cosmic accounting, and the books always had to balance. The weight of this responsibility showed in the stories about him. The Dagda rarely acted impulsively like other gods. He was always calculating, always considering consequences that stretched across generations. This made him seem cold sometimes, but it was actually the opposite. He cared so much about everyone that he couldn't afford to care about anyone. Consider his role during famines. The Dagda could easily fill every belly in Ireland with his magical cauldron, but doing so would disrupt the natural cycles that kept the land fertile. Sometimes allowing people to struggle and adapt was the only way to ensure long-term survival. Talk about tough love on a divine scale. His relationship with other gods reflected this burden too. The Dagda often had to make decisions that hurt those he loved most. When his own children asked for favors, he had to weigh their desires against the needs of all Ireland. Being the ultimate father figure meant sometimes being the ultimate disappointment. The most heartbreaking aspect was his connection to the land itself. The Dagda wasn't just Ireland's protector. He was literally bound to its soil. When the land suffered, he suffered. When it flourished, he flourished. This meant he experienced every drought, every flood, every plague, as if it were happening to his own body. This divine burden explains why the Dagda seems so different from other mythological figures. He couldn't be purely good or purely evil because the land needed both. He couldn't play favorites because the earth itself demanded fairness. He was trapped in a role that required him to be everyone's hero and everyone's villain. The psychological toll was immense. Ancient stories hint that the Dagda sometimes longed for the simple life of a mortal. At least humans could make selfish choices occasionally. The Dagda's every action had to serve the greater good, even when the greater good looked suspiciously like the greater evil. But here's where it gets really intense. All this internal struggle came to a head during the most important battle in Celtic mythology. The Dagda's dual nature would be tested like never before when the fate of Ireland hung in the balance. You won't believe how his burdens shaped the outcome of the war that defined the Celtic world. The Battle of Mag Tuired was basically the Celtic version of the ultimate superhero showdown. On one side, the Tuatha Dé Danann, led by the Dagda. On the other, the Fomorians, ancient chaos beings who wanted to drag Ireland back into primordial darkness. The stakes couldn't have been higher. The winner would control Ireland forever. But here's where the Dagda's story gets truly complex. The night before the battle, he did something that shocked everyone. He went to the Fomorian camp for a diplomatic meeting. Really, it was more like walking into enemy territory with a target on his back. The Fomorians had prepared a massive vat of porridge. We're talking enough to feed an army. Their plan was cruel and clever. They forced the Dagda to eat the entire vat, or they'd cancel the battle entirely. This wasn't just any porridge. It was loaded with milk, fat, goats, and sheep. Basically, the most heavy meal imaginable. The Fomorians figured this would either kill him or make him too sick to fight effectively. The Dagda accepted the challenge. He pulled out a ladle so large it could hold 2 people lying down. Then he proceeded to eat every single drop of that massive meal. The Fomorians watched in horror as their perfect plan backfired spectacularly. Not only did the Dagda survive, but he also managed to seduce a Fomorian woman afterward. Talk about showing off. This incident perfectly captured the Dagda's dual nature. He was simultaneously the wise leader protecting his people and the gluttonous figure who could devour impossible amounts. The same appetite that made him seem comical also made him terrifyingly powerful. His enemies learned not to underestimate the good god's capacity for excess. When the actual battle began, the Dagda's magical items came into play. His cauldron provided endless food for his warriors, ensuring they never tired or weakened. But this gift came with a price. Every meal from the cauldron bound the warriors more tightly to the land they were fighting for. They literally couldn't retreat because they'd consumed Ireland itself. His club proved even more devastating. The Dagda would strike down Fomorian warriors with one end, then immediately revive fallen Tuatha Dé Danann soldiers with the other. The battlefield became a strange dance of death and resurrection, with the Dagda conducting the entire orchestra of violence and mercy. But the real genius was strategic. The Dagda positioned himself at the center of the battle, where he could see everything. He didn't just fight, he orchestrated. When his forces needed strength, he provided food. When they needed courage, he demonstrated it. When they needed mercy, he showed them when to spare fallen enemies. The Fomorians began to realize they weren't just fighting a god, they were fighting the embodiment of Ireland itself. Every time they struck down one of his warriors, the Dagda brought them back. Every time they gained ground, his cauldron fed fresh reinforcements. They were fighting a war against the very concept of renewal. The battle's climax revealed the true cost of the Dagda's power. To ensure victory, he had to make the ultimate sacrifice, binding himself even more permanently to Ireland's fate. From that moment on, he could never leave the land, never abandon his people, never rest from his eternal vigil. Victory came at the price of his own freedom. You think that's intense? Wait until you discover how this ancient good god influenced thousands of years of culture and religion. The Dagda's legacy would survive conquests, conversions, and countless changes to create something truly unexpected. The Dagda's influence on Celtic culture was like dropping a stone in the still water. The ripples spread everywhere. For centuries after the Battle of Mag Tuired, Celtic kings claimed to be his descendants. They adopted his symbols, mimicked his wisdom, and tried to embody his balance of strength and generosity. Some even carried ceremonial clubs, hoping to channel a fraction of his power. Celtic druids elevated the Dagda's dual nature into the foundation of their entire philosophy. They taught that true wisdom came from understanding opposites, light and dark, life and death, joy and sorrow. The Dagda became their primary example of how a leader should embrace all aspects of existence, not just the pleasant ones. His magical cauldron inspired countless legends and artifacts. Archaeological evidence shows that ceremonial cauldrons were central to Celtic religious practices. These weren't just cooking pots. They were sacred vessels that symbolized the community's connection to abundance and renewal. Many Celtic tribes would gather around great cauldrons during festivals, sharing food and stories. When Christianity arrived in Celtic lands, something fascinating happened. The church couldn't simply erase the Dagda's influence. He was too deeply embedded in the culture. Instead, they transformed him. His cauldron became the Holy Grail in Arthurian legends. His club evolved into the staff of power carried by various saints. His wisdom became the model for Christian kings who ruled with divine authority. The most surprising transformation involved his fatherly role. Early Celtic Christianity depicted God the Father with distinctly Dagda-like characteristics, stern but loving, capable of both judgment and mercy, intimately connected to the earth. This wasn't accidental. It was the only way to make the new religion feel familiar to Celtic peoples. Modern interpretations of the Dagda reveal how relevant his message remains. In our age of environmental crisis and social division, his embodiment of natural balance speaks powerfully. Environmental movements often reference Celtic wisdom about living in harmony with natural cycles. The Dagda's understanding that abundance requires responsibility resonates with sustainable living advocates. Popular culture has rediscovered the Dagda in unexpected ways. Fantasy novels, video games, and movies draw on his complex character for inspiration. Unlike simple good versus evil narratives, the Dagda offers something more sophisticated, a hero who succeeds by accepting moral complexity rather than avoiding it. He's appeared in everything from Marvel comics to role-playing games, usually as a wise mentor figure who teaches heroes that true strength comes from understanding balance. So there you have it, the mystery of Dagda's paradoxical nature finally revealed. The good God wasn't good because he was gentle or kind in the way we understand goodness today. He was good because he was effective, powerful, and willing to make the hard choices that kept his people alive and thriving. His club didn't make him evil, it made him complete. This is what the ancient Celts understood that we often forget. True power requires balance. Life and death aren't opposites. They're partners in the eternal dance of existence. Dagda's cauldron and club weren't contradictions. They were two sides of the same divine coin, representing the full spectrum of what it means to be truly powerful and responsible. The next time you hear someone described as good, ask yourself, good at what? The Celts knew that goodness without strength is helplessness, and strength without wisdom is tyranny. Dagda embodied both, making him not just the good God, but the complete God, the kind of leader his people needed in a world where survival meant embracing both creation and destruction. What other Celtic deities challenge our modern understanding of morality? Which myths from the Tuatha Dé Danann would you like to explore next? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the fascinating world of Celtic mythology. Until next time, remember, sometimes the most important truths are found in the spaces between light and shadow.